Okay, welcome everyone to our February 9th board meeting. It's 5:31 p.m. And I just want to do a roll call to see who's present and that we have a quorum. If you can just say present when I call your name. Carrie?
Present.
Eric?
Present.
Scott?
Present.
Daisy? Are you there, Daisy? You were muted. Can anyone else hear her? Daisy, I saw you. Well, I see you and I saw your mouth move, but the sound is off. So I do see you, so you're present. I will note that as present. Myself, Sonia, present. We'll have to check on the sound after. And so we have 5 of us. We have our quorum, so we can continue. And I just need someone to make a motion for us to adjourn to executive session. We have council waiting for us to discuss a collective bargaining update. We have a teacher tenure discussion, as well as a management confidential contract discussion. So I need someone to make that motion, please.
It's Carrie, I'll make the motion.
Carrie, thank you. And a second?
This is Eric, I'll second.
Okay, and all those in favor, Carrie?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Daisy, can we hear you now?
Yes.
Okay, good. And myself, Sonia, yes. We are adjourned to executive session at 5:33, 50. We're good to go. Okay, we'll see you in there. Thank you. Okay, it's 6:39 p.m. We are returning from executive session. And if I can just get a motion to open up our public session.
This is Scott. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Scott. Second?
This is Francine. I'll second.
Okay, great. Thank you. And all those in favor, Carrie?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy?
Yes.
Okay, we're working on her sound. She's been having sound issues. There's always some technical thing with one of us. If it's not me, it's someone. Okay, and myself, Sonia, yes. So we are 6 this evening, so 6-0. We are back in open session. Okay, thank you, everyone. And if I can just ask us all to stand for the pledge and unmute maybe Daisy, not you for right now, but if everyone else can unmute, please, and just say the pledge once we get started here. Thank you so much. Okay. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so welcome everyone this evening. Welcome to all our community members who have joined us this evening as well to observe the meeting. And we can begin our night off with administrator remarks. And Dr. Gosh, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Good evening. As I have in previous meetings, I will reserve my comments for the equity and COVID presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Harrington?
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Ms. Masika. Just a few brief HR updates. First is, as we've reached the midpoint of the school year, and in fact, I believe we're closing in on our 100th day, the HR department has reached out to all first-year instructional staff to request a mid-year check-in meeting. I'm pleased to share that most all of our 20 first-year teachers have scheduled a meeting with me, and in fact, I held my first meeting today. While these meetings are informal in nature, all first-year staff receive some guiding questions to help inform our discussion prior to our scheduled meeting. Most of these questions, of course, center around the transition to Brewster. These meetings provide the Human Resource Department and District Office with a valuable opportunity to solicit feedback from our new hires in an effort to continue to refine and adapt our orientation program and improve upon our organizational structures that support the retention of our staff. I'm certainly grateful to have had or will have the opportunity to meet with each of them. Second, as shared in my administrative remarks at our last meeting, we are in the process of planning for the second regional diversity hiring fair organized by the Lower Hudson region of school personnel administrators held on February 27th. I will be meeting with those administrators that are able to participate tomorrow. Consistent with our work with NYU's Metropolitan Center for Equity and School Transformation, our central question asks, what can I do within my sphere of influence to dismantle and disrupt barriers to equity? Hiring is a critical component to such work. Indeed, our commitment through the hiring process focuses on three central tenets of the ideal Brewster candidate. First, sound pedagogy or instructional practices that illuminate student-centered instruction. Second, content expertise that reveals a candidate's genuine passion and scholarship in their content area. And finally, a candidate's commitment to culturally responsive educational practices that promote inclusion and equity. As such, our efforts on February 27th will begin the hiring process by asking potential candidates to share the actions and structures they have utilized and adopted in their practice to promote inclusion, demonstrate cultural competency, and ensure a commitment to equity. I certainly want to thank our administrators who will be participating and recognize their continued commitment to this important work. With those two highlights in mind, the department looks forward to the coming weeks and months as it further builds sound structures to attract, recruit, support, and of course, retain the highest quality candidates to the Brewster Central School District. And that concludes my comments for this evening.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Carlson.
Hi, good evening. I'll be brief, and I would just like to acknowledge our facilities department, our transportation department for all the work that they've done with all the snow that we've gotten over the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to thank them for their efforts, because we understand it's, it's an extraordinary challenge, and they have homes of their own to tend to, and imagine doing your own driveway and then having to go do the district. So we want to thank them for their efforts and let them know that we appreciate them. And with that, I will reserve the rest of my comments for the budget presentation.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Banlow.
Thank you, Ms. Masika. As I've done before, I'm also going to reserve my comments because we have a lot of important information to share with the board this evening. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And for myself, I just have a few things. One, I would like to, I know we say thank you a lot, but it doesn't ever feel like thank you is enough of something to say. But I do, on behalf of the board, want to say thank you to our administration, our, from our district office to the buildings, to our support staff, and as Victor said, grounds and facilities and transportation, and and to all our teachers. I mean, it's just amazing, and it continues to amaze me how great our district is and everyone who works here, and how no matter what, they just rise further. And I feel like treat this school system as a second family. And it's just amazing to see. And I really want everyone to know how much the board appreciates that effort by everyone. It just makes a difference in the lives of the kids that, we're all here for. And it's not easy. So we recognize that. And I just want to say thank you. And additionally, I just want to acknowledge the community that we have on this evening. We don't always get a large crowd. So we do always appreciate when we have the community who, when they take the time to come out and tune in and listen to our board meetings and what we have to share and what we deliberate on. It really helps us get information out to the community. And I don't know that everybody always goes back to the recording. So it's really great. And I thank everyone for coming out and taking the time to tune in.
Sonia, you froze a little. You're frozen.
We forget, but we're actually in this really together. I mean, our kids are going through what everyone's children are going through, and we genuinely believe that, we're thankful when the community gets involved and they offer their input, and we can all work together, the board and the community and the administration, to just really make this district great. So that's it for me. Thank you. And let's see, I'll have more to say later as well in the presentation. But for now, I think we have our student representative, Diana Vink, is on this evening.
Hello, yes, how's my sound?
Welcome, it sounds good. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so first up, high risk winter sports are starting up next week, which is so great that we are able to do that. This weekend,
Diana, you're all broken up again. Maybe. Oh, and I think we lost her.
And they
Diana, if you can hear us, could you maybe just pause for a moment?
It's just going to be a really series.
Diana.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Diana, you have a really big delay and a lag. Can you perhaps call in on your phone? It's okay. We've all had issues. It's the technology world.
Is she in the attendees now? Maybe she dialed in over there.
I think Jim is
Di-
second.
Yeah, Diana, go ahead and try to, if you click on the chevron next to your unmute button and just choose switch to phone audio and call in. That should usually works much better when you're having laggy internet issues.
Oh.
We'll give her another minute to work through this. Our students are important.
Absolutely.
Love when they can share, so.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm so sorry.
No, it's perfect.
I do want to comment that high-risk winter sports are starting up this week, which is awesome that we are able to do that. Secondly, this weekend, Brewster High School's Model United Nations will be sending a digital delegation to NAMAN, which is the North American Invitational Model United Nations Conference. So those teams are going to be debating using video conferencing software from Friday to Sunday. Speaking of the Model UN, they actually recently finished the Columbia Model United Nations Conference and Exposition. So we actually brought home a couple awards from that. Junior Emily Sullivan received a verbal commendation. Austin Matra and myself actually received honorable mentions. And Henry Bloss is a senior who received an honorable mention as part of the ad hoc committee, which is the most advanced committee at the conference. So that is really great. And it was a really unique experience being able to have a conference digitally. So I'm looking forward to that next one this weekend. Next, the freshman parent orientation will be posted on the website tomorrow afternoon. And yesterday at JFK, district-wide testing continued, and 10% more students and staff were tested. The last thing I want to mention is that there is a really great interview up on the Brewster Schools website with World War II veteran Ralph Osterholt. He shares his experiences from the war and kind of gives a more inside look, more in-depth look into some of those personal experiences. So it's a really great read, and it's definitely an interesting thing to check out.
Okay, is everything?
That's everything. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much. It was a lot of great stuff you shared. So I'm glad you were able to get on. Okay, have a great night. Okay, so now we move on to our presentations, recognition discussion. And first up, district highlights. Dr. Bandlow, would you like to take it away?
I would love to. Thank you so much. So tonight we have with us our principal at Brewster High School, Miss Nicole Horler, and she is going to be presenting two wonderful awards that were given to two BHS students. One is the Hero of Hope Award, and the second is Quest. Let me get forgive me, I gotta put my glasses on here. Quest Bridge National Scholar Award. So I know she has some presenters with her this evening. So I'm going to pass the baton right now to Ms. Horler. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So the first presentation is actually a Hero of Hope recipient to Marla Egan. Marla is a special ed teacher at the high school. This will be her third year as advisor for Salty Hands. And 2 weeks ago, she secretly received this award from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and she didn't tell anyone until they sent me the video of her secretly. And so she's mortified about it, which could be one of the reasons that she's not here tonight. But so what I would like to say about this award is, on behalf of the Greater New York chapter, Marla Egan has been selected as this year's Hero of Hope Award recipient. The award goes out to an individual without any direct connection to cystic fibrosis, and who works towards the ongoing efforts through her club, Salty Hands, has been monumental. So things you should know about the club. If you can go to the next slide, thank you. And you can go to the next slide. This is the one we want. In Salty Hands, the mission is to spread awareness and support funds for those who suffer from cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis, for those of you who don't know, is a progressive genetic disease that causes persistent lung infections and limits the person's ability to breathe over time. 10 years ago, in fact, this March will be the 10th anniversary that we have raised funds specifically for cystic fibrosis, was created with Brian McPartland in mind. He is a Brewster graduate, and he lives with cystic fibrosis. So if you go to Mr. Brewster, which is one of our biggest fundraisers of the year, usually we have it in March, The show, the contestants compete to raise money and awareness throughout the school and community in order to win a coveted Mr. Brewster title. This year, we've had some obvious issues because of COVID, so we can't have Mr. Brewster in person. So this year they've been raising annual t-shirt sales and then doing their Mr. Brewster fundraising on the side. Last year, and if you can go to the next slide, we'll see how much money we've raised. All total in the last 10 years, Brewster High School has raised over $300,000 specifically given to cystic fibrosis. Every single penny that is raised is given over to cystic fibrosis. Last year was a record-breaking year. We raised over $80,000. One student alone raised almost $20,000. So it's every year it just gets more remarkable. So Cystic Fibrosis wants to thank Marla, and they put together this little video. If you could click on the dollar amount, not the Facebook amount, the dollar amount. Yep, that will take you to the video. You can click on the video. I don't think it played.
Yeah, he just is adding the audio.
Okay.
Not only furthered awareness. We are proud to congratulate the Greater New York Chapter's Hero of Hope, Marla Egan. Marla's dedication and support of the Salty Hands Club at Brewster High School has not only furthered awareness of cystic fibrosis, but has led the club to its highest fundraising in 10 years of over $90,000. Marla is an incredible role model for the group members and always looks for ways to do more for CFF. Her students value her passion and admire her leadership. This award is given to someone without a direct connection to cystic fibrosis. We continuously are inspired by individuals like Marla alongside us in the fight against cystic fibrosis. Congratulations, Marla, and we are so thankful for all that you do for the CF community.
Thank you, Eva. And out of all the people that you guys could have chosen for this award, you've chosen me. I'm deeply honored and blessed, and I thank you so much for it. I'm so proud of my club this year, the past 3 years. They're a wonderful group of students, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. Thank you.
Yay! Yay, Brewster High School! Woo!
So I'd like to thank obviously all the past participants of Mr. Brewster and Marla Egan, and of course, Matt Cunningham, who MCs Mr. Brewster, and Anne-Marie Chalmers, who helps put it all together. So I'd like to just congratulate all of them and thank Cystic Fibrosis for welcoming us every year and letting us do this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Orler. And congratulations to Marla. And if you can go into the next award.
Yep. Jim, can you go to the Quest Bridge? And then go to the second slide.
So while Jim is getting this ready, I just want to say that this particular award recipient was at the Rotary Club last week and was honored there. So we're thrilled to have this award honored tonight. Go ahead, Mrs. Horler.
Great. So QuestBridge, just to give you some background information, is what was founded in 1994. It's a national nonprofit based in California, and it connects the nation's most exceptional low-income youth with leading colleges and opportunities. By working with students individually, beginning at the beginning of high school and then working with them through college and eventually their first job, QuestBridge aims to increase the percentage of talented low-income students attending some of our nation's best colleges. This particular award this year was given to Pablo Cristosimo, and he's on, and he'll be on in a second. But first, I'd like to introduce his counselor, Jess McCann.
Hi, thanks to the BOE for the opportunity to share this accomplishment of one of our great students, one of many we have at the high school. Also, thanks to our district and building administration for your consistent support of programs like this, and specifically to Nikki, our principal, our Miss Horler, for really establishing a culture in our building where students feel the confidence to be able to reach for really prestigious programs like this. So thank you for that. If you could go to the next slide, please. I'll tell you a bit about the program and about this year's recipient. So this year, there were over 18,000 students who applied for the QuestBridge College Match Program. There were almost 7,000 finalists selected for the scholarship, and they finally chose over 1,400 recipients, one of whom was Pablo Crisostomo Suarez. He was admitted to his first choice, which is Vassar College. And the QuestBridge website lists their award amount as over $200,000, which includes the 4-year tuition and fees, room and board, books, supplies. And for Pablo, because Vassar costs
Jess, we lost your volume. Ms. Horler, can you jump in just in case?
Yes. So Vassar, it's a shocking amount that Vassar costs. So for Pablo, his complete package is worth I believe the amount is $303,000. So Vassar, room, board, and tuition for Vassar is $75,000 a year. So this scholarship for Pablo is worth $303,680. So it really is an amazing amount, and he did an amazing job. So I know Pablo's on here. So we just wanted to welcome Pablo to tonight, and then go to the next slide, and we'll tell you a little bit about him and why he got this scholarship. Pablo, can you can you turn your video on so everybody can see you?
Hello, can you see me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. So, Pablo himself is dedicated and committed student whose willingness to push himself academically can be seen through the rigor of the high school program that he's taken. He has taken, over the course of 4 years, 8 AP courses, 4 dual enrollment classes, and 8 advanced or honors classes. He's actively involved in our school music and theater department as a member of the men's choir and various fall dramas and spring musicals. He was recognized for his vocal talents as a member of area all-state mixed chorus in 11th grade. Pablo is currently the vice president of the Interact, or it's our portion of the Rotary Club, a service organization run through Rotary, and a member of the Science Honor Society. Pablo intends to study computer science in college, and an interest supported by the work he has done through his mentor, Codify, which is teaching basic coding and computer science skills as a self-taught programmer. Pablo, congratulations. Is there a couple things you'd like to tell us?
Yeah, definitely. First off, thank you for having me here to talk about this award that I received. It still feels very surreal, and like throughout this entire time, initially the process of working through the application was very quick. I had to submit it by the end of September, and then when I was announced as a finalist, I started to really realize that I was representing something more than myself, because I didn't feel like the story that I was telling in my application was all that unique. And what I told through my story is that even though I come from like the QuestBridge ideal student is, I come from a low income background. My parents are both immigrants. My dad came from Guatemala, and my mom came from the Dominican Republic, all at a very young age. Coming from a very large household with not a lot of money. Even though I was born in these relatively abnormal circumstances, I was able to make a somewhat normal life for myself and be able to excel in spite of all of the things that I had going against me. And to have someone like me with that kind of background succeed in the way that I've managed to, I think could be very inspiring to a lot of other people who I've grown up with. I've grown up with a lot of people who have a very similar background to me financially and socially, who haven't maybe been given like the resources or the opportunities to excel, and feel like they're limited simply based on the situation that they've been born into. And I am very proud to be representative of the idea that there is a possibility, and there is potential for a lot of people to be able to get out of that hole and be able to get out of the mud with the circumstances they're given if you're committed to working hard and seeking out your own opportunities and such, which I've done, for example, through Interact Club, through the Rotary Club. I entered Interact in a very low point in my life where I was not in the best mental state, and I found it as my first in freshman year as my first real source of community service, as my first real avenue towards like seeing that I could help other people in my community in a way that would affect them in a long-term way. That's pretty much it. It's just great to be able to represent and be kind of an inspiration to a lot of people who are very, very similar to me and who might not know what to do, especially in these very like unpredictable times.
Pablo, on behalf of the Board of Education and the entire Brewster community, we are so proud of you. You are an inspiration to us all. I hope you feel the love from everybody. And we also want to congratulate Marla. We hope she's out there online listening. And I want to thank Ms. Horler and I want to thank Ms. McCain for all the work that they do each and every day for our students and our staff. So thank you for presenting tonight. So Ms. Masika, with your permission, I'll go to the next COVID update.
Yes, I actually just want to also say thank you, Dr. Banlow. You stated it perfectly, and it just makes me smile. It just makes me so proud. You know, and I had nothing to do with that, but it's just so great to hear the accomplishments our students have, and it lets us know we're all on the right track and we're doing great things, and the kids are definitely shining, and it's just great. So thank you so much. Thank you, Pablo, for coming on and sharing your story with us. And we're very, we're proud of you. So great job. Thank you. Okay. So, and the other thing, I did have a quick question. I know Mrs. Horler shared, do you think possibly we could maybe do last year, I think we just got it in. Is there thought on maybe doing a Zoom remote, possibly presentation of Mr. Brewster this year? I don't know if we can make it happen, but.
We are actually in the middle of planning something, all virtual, where the interviews, I know you all know, you've seen it at the beginning where we interview them and there's a whole bunch of funny quips and then they have some talent, and hopefully we're able to video pieces of it. We think probably some of the dancing won't be, obviously we won't be able to do the dancing and stuff, but we're hoping that we'll have like some kind of online money raising system where if you watch the video, you contribute a couple dollars and hopefully it works. Probably looking forward for it to come out end of March.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to that. We all are. Okay, so Dr. Banlow, next up, we have our COVID update, and I believe Dr. Gosh and yourself will be presenting.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Masika. So first I want to start off with, I want to thank the Board of Education. None of us thought this pandemic was going to last this long, and the board behind the scenes is working 24/7. I even had to bother them on Super Bowl Sunday to troubleshoot several different situations in regards to to pandemic and school related items. So I want to thank them because nobody really sees all the work that they do behind the scenes. And then I also want to echo what Ms. Masika said at the beginning of our meeting, that everyone from our snow crew, our custodial crew, all the way up to our district office and throughout the entire Brewster School community, the work that everybody is putting in during this unprecedented time where we just keep having other things thrown at us every single day is just phenomenal. So I want to thank you for that. The other folks I want to thank is all of our families that are listening in tonight. I'm thrilled that there's 103 people on tonight. And I think that's the silver lining of using Zoom, is that we have more people tuning in, more people involved in listening. And you know, we really appreciate the emails, we appreciate the phone calls, we appreciate the thoughts and creative ideas as we move forward. So tonight, Dr. Gosh and I have been working very, very carefully. We've been looking through the numerous emails that have come in, thank you so much, to make sure that in the presentation we are about to share, we are extremely comprehensive with everything that was questioned in those emails. I know Mrs. Cunningham is going to be on the lookout and make sure that we've covered everything, and she'll let us know if there's any other questions that we may not have covered. With that said, after we present, and if your question was not something that was in one of the emails, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us, your building principal, you know, Dr. Gosh and myself, and we will be happy to meet with you, talk with you, and talk through things. Because as I said at the very beginning of this whole process last March, we need everybody's thoughts. We don't have all the answers. Every day things change. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the reconvening of our re-entry committees. That will take place immediately after our February break. So we are going to be looking for some new folks to join in on those committees, and we're going to be talking about that in a moment with our PowerPoint. So that's one of the really one of the most important things. But we are going to need everybody's, if you can't join the committee, we're going to need a lot of creative solutions. We're going to need a lot of thoughts about how we can move forward for the remainder of the school year and how we can move forward in our opening for next year for our students, which are the utmost importance to everybody, both in and out of the school district. We have to maintain the safety of all of our students and staff. As you know, that's one of our goals. We have, and I know everybody knows this, so please forgive me for saying this again, but we know we have to follow the guidelines that are given to us from the CDC. I did speak with our attorneys. Supposedly the CDC is coming out with new guidelines this week, so we'll all be on the lookout in regards to the new variants. We continue to work with the Putnam County Department of Health. I know everybody's aware of that. It is extremely important to the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents, and I want the board to know that we are in constant communication with other school districts. Everybody at every level in our districts, we are talking to our colleagues. One of the most important things we all feel very strongly about, and I know everybody feels this way, is we want to make sure that all of our staff is vaccinated. Some of our staff have been able to get the first shot, some the second, but there's still staff that are having a hard time getting appointments. So that seems to be picking up. We're hoping that that will happen because we want to make sure that that happens. And we are also hoping to get more COVID tests down the pike because you know, it's really, really critical to us that we have that availability to test our students and to test our staff, because there's nothing more important to us than our students and our staff. The other thing I do want to mention is, as you know, the county, the state decided that with high-risk sports that they decided to ask the Putnam County, the county executives to get together and to talk about that and make a decision. And they gave us specific things that they want us to follow. There's also some questions out there about 3 feet versus 6 feet in regards to proximity. There are districts in Westchester that are sticking with the 6 feet, but all of this is fluid. We are continuing to watch. We appreciate the families that are out there. I want to let the board know that are advocating for vaccinations for our staff, advocating for more COVID testing, because we don't want the pipeline to be dry for that. With that said, I think just please, you know, creative solutions, your thoughts, your ideas. We don't have all the answers, but we're really looking forward to moving together as a school community on behalf of our kids. And we know how hard this is for families. We know how hard this is for all of us to navigate. So with that said, I'm going to ask Dr. Gosh. He has prepared a PowerPoint. We looked to make sure that we were comprehensive, and Mrs. Cunningham will be on the lookout. So Dr. Gosh.
Thank you, Dr. Banlow. So let's jump right in. We wanted to begin with something that's relevant to today, which is why was today a snow day and not an all remote day? And we appreciate the timing of all of this since we're able to address it publicly tonight. We have 5 snow days built into the school calendar. If we use those 5 snow days, then we go into days that would impact spring break. So here are the days that, on the left-hand column, the snow days that we've had so far and the cohorts that were supposed to be in person on that day. The right column are the new in-person instructional days and the cohorts that are impacted by those new in-person days. So we want students in schools, hybrid students who want to be here, we want them in school as much as possible. So the decision that we had in front of us was have an all remote day now or an in-person day in the spring. We elected to have an in-person day in the spring. Now we've used 4 out of 5 of our snow days. If we go beyond the 5th snow day, we are in discussions about maybe it's time for us to look at all remote in that regard. And the reason for that would be that we want to have continuity of instruction, right? And I understand, look, I'm a parent, I have a little guy. There's a lot of inconsistency and a lack of structure for families and for students. We understand that. We need to also think about this long-term in terms of the calendar, right? So there's 180 school days. How do those days parse out over the course of the year? So when we're making that decision, we're not just making that decision for this week, but we're taking that big picture into account. So I hope that at least, even if there's some disagreement about why we made today a snow day as opposed to an in-person day, hopefully this provides some rationale behind why we did so. Dr. Banlow mentioned testing at the beginning of this presentation, and I just wanted to share our results from yesterday's test administration. So again, a huge thank you to Mrs. Chalmers, to our nursing staff, to our support staff who were able to condense what we initially had said was 2 days of testing to 1. We were still able to test 166 individuals and we had 0 positive results. So I believe our in-person testing rate based on our sample is below a 0.3% at this point. So we're very proud of that. Again, I can't thank the staff enough, and I'll just remind everybody that we're trying to be very good stewards of our resources, as well as, or at the same time, providing this extra layer of safety and reassurance. So we've done this with our in-house staff, and we've done it with the kits that have been provided to us by the Department of Health. So we're not hiring outside companies to come in and do this like some other districts are, and we're still getting the job done. So I would again just like to thank our nurses for being committed to this, to parents for understanding. And I'll just also say that we have to test on Mondays, because otherwise, if we do get positive results, we're ending up contact tracing and quarantining students and staff unnecessarily. So Mondays are our target days. We have 1 additional testing cycle, which will be on Monday, March 1st. All right, so this is a graphic that we have used several times, and we're using it as a way to show how we're continually gathering information from various constituent groups in order to make our decisions. It's important that we have multiple feedback loops, and we're feeling like we're doing that. Every time we have a meeting with staff, we're asking about what type of professional learning needs and supports they need. We just had a high school teacher focus group yesterday. We have student focus groups on the calendar at the high school level. We're trying to make sure that as we go through this process, we don't want to make any assumptions. We don't want to stay stagnant, and we want to make sure that we can ask as many questions as we can in order to turn that into actionable feedback that help better serve our students. So with all that said, when we were trying to sort of think about how we could present all the different phases that we have seen us go through in terms of reentry for this school year, we initially started by numbering these phases. And then that didn't work because this is not a sequential a sequential process, right? Where we're just saying this is a definitive start and end. Instead, it's iterative and ongoing. So I'm just going to just sort of chunk out these phases that we're seeing us engage in. So first we had our in-person reentry, and we're really proud of the fact that we were able to open on day one. Our staff showed up. There was a lot of uncertainty, but they were there. We were able to open. Some of our neighboring districts were not able to do so. Because of the systems and structures that we were able to create through reentry, we were able to make it through the middle of October without having a single closure, which, every day that we're able to be in, we're grateful for, and we work hard every day to be able to open. And I'll just say again, the closings that we have had were because of either the number of staff that we had to quarantine and we couldn't staff the buildings, or because we received information so late, in the evening that we weren't able to contact trace. There are many instances of administrators coming in on Sundays, doing this work, well past what would quote unquote be school hours in order to get the buildings open. And I'm not saying that because we want a pity party. I'm just pointing it out because our building level administrators especially have put in an enormous amount of work in order to open every day. So I just want to thank them for that, and thank you for your patience as we continue this battle each day. We also have gone through a number of schedule changes and adjustments. So I know that things were rocky in the beginning because if we have to be remote, are we on the cohort schedule, or are we on the full remote schedule? What periods and what days are being followed on any given day? The middle school had to change but we decided that the middle school should change their schedule. It increased the length of the school day. It was able to have some additional interventions in the middle of the day. And so these are things that would be done over the course of a summer with students not in session, where you're able to really say, okay, how does this going to affect this? We're doing that sort of as we go. So this is another way that and maybe we're not done yet, right? Like maybe as we move through, we're going to say, we need to tweak this or need to do that. But that's another phase of this work. We also have the positive cases and contact tracing. I mentioned that the work that goes into that, which, is fine. It's not about the work, it's about opening for students. But we've also learned some things, and we've been able to make structural changes throughout that learning. So for example, we initially went to 2-tier busing because we wanted to make sure that we spread out students on the school bus. That led to certain situations where we had large holding areas in the beginning and the end of the school day. That didn't work because we were ending up quarantining too many students, right? Even one student quarantining is too many, I agree. But we wanted to make sure we minimize that as much as possible. The K-8 administrators especially were able to make those changes with the help of the staff, who was very understanding. So this is another way we looked at this. We have K-5 students eating in their classrooms, because that way, if there is a positive case, we don't have to quarantine 4 sections of students, we quarantine 1 section. So that's another sort of chunk of the work. Thanks to the work of our teachers and our PPS staff, we were able to bring in our students with IEPs who were in the most restrictive settings for 5 days a week instruction. Those are students who are in career skills or life skills, students who have at least one special class on their IEP. So that was another shift that we had made throughout. I went on in the beginning about testing. No other school in Putnam County is doing testing. And I'm really proud of the fact that we're doing this using our own staff, using tests that are provided by the Department of Health. I mean, again, we're being good stewards of the resources while providing another layer of reassurance and safety to our staff and our community. Increase in synchronous time at CV Star. This was another big shift that we asked our teachers to jump into, and they have. We are starting with the second semester, which was just Monday, and they were synchronous or asynchronous that day, and we were out today. But moving forward, teachers will be streaming at least 50% of the time in ELA and math at CV Star. That's in addition to the synchronous time that's already happening at the middle school and at the high school. Again, another big phase or shift that we have been working to constantly improve throughout. The semester 2 learning choice and physical capacity, as you know, and as we have mentioned from previous board meetings, this drives a lot of our decision making. We know that based on the social distancing guidelines that we need to comply with, we know how many students we can fit in a given learning space. So now that semester 2 has sort of kicked into gear, we know what the numbers look like. We can say, okay, we've lived in this for a semester. We know what our capacity is. How can we use learning spaces a little bit differently to better support our students? And finally, another phase which we're very excited about is to think about how we can best restore some sort of normalcy for our students. And when I say this, I mean, there are only certain things that we can control, but we want to bring back K-5 clubs. So we're having those conversations now. We want to get that off the ground. In the past, we had intervention support before and after school in reading and math at the K-5 level. Our transportation department has said, okay, we think we can work this out now that we know what semester 2 looks like, and we know, and we've lived this, we can work that out. We can also look at some after school programs at the middle school level as well. So I'm sharing all this as a way for us to, I guess, sort of celebrate what we've been able to do, but also to know that we are committed to this on an ongoing basis, to constantly improving, to constantly looking at this in different phases and chunks, and thinking about how we can better serve the needs of our students, given the constraints and the conditions that we are in. So then the question is, what are the next phases? And there are some things on here that we're really excited to talk about. The first is, by March 8th, we're saying that all students with IEPs will be able to come in K-12 5 days a week. Again, now that we know what our physical capacity looks like throughout the buildings for semester 2, we're able to do this. So this is a big win. I want to thank the building and district administrators for doing this, and the teachers who I know will be working with us in making these plans happen. Transportation, food services. I mean, this is all hands on deck to now say, okay, we can bring in this many students for 5 days a week instruction. Great, that's a phase. Then moving into the spring and thinking forward. Okay, so now that we've sort of gotten through this, how can we work to increase in-person instructional time for all other students? So we're going to look at we already have, but we want to have some more additional collective thinking around how we can increase in-person instructional time for other students K-12. And again, we have some ideas on this, but there are a lot of logistics to work through, but we look forward to those conversations. Next is thinking about the summer. So the summer isn't school, but there can be different opportunities that take place either through partnerships. The town of Southeast have been incredible partners before with our summer swim and learn program. Maybe we can look on expanding some enrichment activities, with them. We have ideas about some summer supports in terms of a summer bridge programs for students going from across schools. So second to third, 5th to 6th, and 6th to 9th. So we're thinking about these next 3 phases, or sort of these next big chunks, and as a way to organize our thinking and our resources, and to move forward with some actionable steps. Moving then into September. So it's really important that I think you hear this from us as an administrative team. Even if we were able to bring in every single student 5 days a week from now until the end of June, given our phenomenal teaching staff, we still would not be able to address the learning gaps that have existed over the last year. There needs to be by June, I mean, there needs to be a multi-year approach and commitment to this. So we need to think about, as we move into September, what's plan A? Okay, we're all back 100%, great. How are we then going to think about closing certain achievement gaps that we know exist? Oh, and while addressing the social emotional concerns of students that we've heard from parents, that we've seen changes in students, right? So if we can't all be in 100%, what's plan B, C, and D? And then what are the resources that we need in order to get there? So and honestly, I would hope that by June of 2022, all students are sort of caught up as to where they would have been without a pandemic, but it might take more than just next year. So we need to think strategically about the resources that we have, the resources that we need, the gaps that we want to close, and then how we're going to work together to figure out how to close and address those gaps. So as Dr. Banlow mentioned, one way that we know was successful prior to getting us here, to having us open on day 1, were our re-entry subcommittees. So these categories were laid out in the governor's reopening guidance And we took them verbatim, made them into subcommittees, and then we had these subcommittees that looked really intensely at all the issues around health and safety, at digital equity, at staffing and human resources. And we would have these sub conversations within then the larger conversation around, okay, what do we need to do in order to open on day one safely? So we're re-upping those committees. We want to, and as Dr. Banlow mentioned, we're going to open up membership as well. People want to come in and talk to us about ideas they have around teaching and learning. That's great. We just met last week. It was great to see everybody again. There were some really solid ideas that we're following up on. And we are, if you have answers for us, we are open to hearing them, and we will figure out a way. If we can do it, I mean, we will do everything we can in order to better serve our students. So this is not a stagnant process. This is a way for us to sort of reinvigorate our thinking and within those phases as we move into.
Dr. Gosh?
Yes.
Could you go back to that slide? I just want to make a point that the committees are so critical that we can't do things in isolation because they're all interdependent. So yes, please, let us know if you want to. I know we'll be sending something out. If you're interested, please join us. We are looking for other creative solutions we might not have thought about. We have a different financial picture that I know Mr. Carlson will be sharing tonight with a little pixie dust. So perhaps we didn't have that picture before. Perhaps there's some other things we might be able to do outside of the box. But as we get all the emails coming in, all of that information we are saving, we are flowing that into these committees, so you know that we are looking into it. Thank you, Dr. Gosh. I just wanted to give you a water break too.
Thank you. I want to break from my voice. So and then thinking about the next phases. So here's what. So these reentry subcommittees are going to be active again. We're going to ask them to think about the spring. So for the spring, what are the ideas you have for increasing in-person instructional time for students who are not currently there 5 days a week? What are some ideas you have around restoring community? One of the groups that we brought together last spring came out of the district-wide crisis team, and it was a group that came up with the idea for the parade and for the Bears Bonanza in June. So what are some other ways that we can help students feel connected and feel as though they belong within the learning community, whether that be virtual or in person? Then we want to talk about the summer. What are some opportunities that you see for partnerships? What are some enrichment or support that you would like to see for your own son or daughter, or that you're seeing as a need in the community? And then thinking about fall 2021. So what are, again, if we have 100% in instruction, I pray that everybody can be in 5 days a week. So then what does our plan look like in that case? And then what, if we can't do that, what do the plans look like, and how do we best support our students? And we're saying this as a commitment. We hope to have time at the March 23rd, May 11th, and June 22nd agenda to report out, not as individual subcommittees, but as one collective committee to bring forward some ideas for action steps.
So Dr. Gosh, I just want to also, the point that you made about making sure we're worried about the social emotional health of our children. We have reached out to our PTAs, all of our principals and board members, folks that are listening in. If you've got creative ideas that we can do, for example, we had a drive-through Halloween trick-or-treat event for our students. We ran it through our medical director to make sure we were protecting everybody. We want to make sure, like the car parade, all those things are so important for the kids. So send those ideas into us. It would be great if you send it into your buildings. And I want to also just stress that all of the collective bargaining groups in our district are working together, and that's unique. It's not happening in every district, to make sure that we are doing the best we can for our students. So that's really important and really critical. So Dr. Gosh, thank you so much. And I think we've covered, Mrs. Cunningham, I didn't know if you wanted to ask us any questions at this point.
Can I just say real quick? So yes, if Carrie, if you can just share perhaps if there was anything that was missed, and then I'd like to give the board also an opportunity to ask its questions. So if you want to go ahead, Carrie.
Sure. Obviously, you addressed a lot of the questions that were asked, but there are a few, and some may be like sort of more, specific, and may have been things that you've covered in the past, but One of the things, you know, that you mentioned is that we're now, as of, I think you said March 8th, the K through 12 kids with IEPs will be back in school full time, which is great news. A lot of the questions that we received, you know, the general theme is why and when can all of the kids give back 5 days a week? So can you just, you know, can you just give like sort of the main reasons behind that, whether it's social distancing requirements or, you know, space requirements at the school, but you know, there are obviously reasons that preclude us from having everyone who wants to come back in full time. And I thought it may be helpful if you can just identify some of those that preclude that.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I actually had one more slide, which was just 3 questions that we could address, and that was one of them. So our physical capacity is driven by the assurance that we provided to the New York State Department of Education and to the governor's office that we would provide 6 feet of distance between students. So if you think about a classroom and the layout of a classroom, that then limits the number of desks that you can fit in any given classroom. So with those social distancing guidelines, as long as the Department of Health and everyone's telling us it's 6 feet, we need to adhere to that, which greatly limits our physical capacity and ability to bring in everyone. So for example, if you know, a given class has 25 students, that classroom may only be able to hold 14 students, let's say, which of course is where we came to the cohorting and the 50% you know, maximum capacity at that time for in-person instruction. So the 6 feet of social distance is what drives our decision making when it comes to how many students we can physically fit in the building at any one time.
And so just, you even mentioned, I think it was you, that, or maybe it was Dr. Banlow, that there are schools in Westchester and obviously in Putnam, because we do it and others do it, that adhere to this 6 foot guideline. But then there are questions about some Westchester schools maybe using a 3 foot guideline, or, you know, so the question is, if they've also made a representation that was required, I think you said that they'd be 6 feet between the kids, how is it, do we know, that other schools perhaps are not doing it that way?
So I just want to be very respectful to my colleagues across Westchester, and there are districts in Westchester that are not going to do the 3 feet, because if you do the 3 feet, you're going to be quarantining more students. So, and that's what the Department of Health is telling us. And there's also districts in Westchester that are staying 6 feet because of that reason, and because of the safety guidelines that originally came out. Putnam County Department of Health is still saying to us, and I just was on the phone with my superintendent colleagues in Putnam on Monday. We asked that question. We're constantly asking questions about everything. And that question did come up. And again, you know, 6 feet. We are sticking with the 6 feet because you're going to end up, it's not safe. And these are epidemiologists we're speaking to. It's not safe. You're going to be ending up quarantining more students. So we have to follow the medical science we are given through the Putnam County Department of Health and through the New York State Department of Health. So I hope that answers that question, Mrs. Cunningham.
I think it does. And, you know, I think some parents have asked, you know, whether the district could or should advocate to the Department of Health that, you know, they lighten things up a little bit. And I'm talking about the Putnam County, you know, and, you know, I know that you're all in constant contact with them, but, you know, it seems as if Westchester's Department of Health is doing things a little differently. So is there any, you know, discussion, I guess the question is, with the Putnam County Department of Health to, you know, relax any of these restrictions, you know, based on the fact that other counties perhaps have done so?
We talked about that on Monday, and still the same exact 6 feet is the safest, and that is what we're following.
Okay. One other thing which you guys talked about, the space. Obviously, the space limits us in terms because of the 6 feet requirement. We got a few questions that brought up the same types of ideas, questioning, you know, have these types of things been considered? One was having specials done by pushing into classrooms instead of, and then so that those, for example, an art classroom could be used for a core class. Another suggestion is, you know, having all remote teachers using office space instead of a classroom, asking whether furniture has been removed, and whether like gyms and cafeterias are being used for instruction, although I would imagine that is a quarantining issue. But, you know, could you just speak to some of the things that have been done and considered in terms of space allocation, just to resolve those types of questions?
Okay, Dr. Gouch, go ahead.
Sure. No, that's okay. I can.
No, you can jump in. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So, Ms. Cunningham, yes, 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 and no to your questions. So first, we have during our reentry conversations, we did look at things like the library and, you know, the art room and for specials to be push-ins as opposed to pull out. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did for students, and this was very clear in the teaching and learning subcommittee, is we wanted to provide as much of a quote unquote typical experience as possible. We didn't want students to be in their classroom, little kids to be in their classroom all day, and that's the only place they would ever be, right? They would ever see. So that was part of the rationale behind that. I will say that in terms of looking at space moving forward, if it's okay, I would love to be able to, you know, present, whether it's at the next board meeting or through some sort of screencast file, the specifics of the plan, because there are different people that we need to loop into those conversations about how we're reallocating space in the second semester. But I will say that it definitely involves, it's like some staff will be moved, and we are looking at every option possible. We've even had conversations administratively about, well, you know, the high school is done at a certain time each day. How can we use that space? Each principal has looked exhaustively at their room utilization charts to see, you know, where there's flexibility, how space can be borrowed across buildings. So I'm not saying we have all the answers, but we have a lot of ideas that we want to hash out through this, you know, collective thinking in the subcommittees. And I'm not sure if I addressed all 4 of those questions, but that's our thinking at this point.
Okay. Well, we had a couple questions about testing and just asking why it's done during school hours, because obviously in whatever school the testing is being done that day, the kids are not there and they're home that day when they would otherwise be in. So can you just
Yes.
explain?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. So what again, I want to thank the nurses. We went from, you know, what if we did this on a Monday to Friday, it was happening the next week, right? So the nurses have been incredible in making all this happen. Part of this is us learning and figuring out how it all worked. We didn't know how many students we were going to accommodate and be able to accommodate in an hour or a day. That's part of why we went from 2 days to 1. So to address the needs of some parents have said, yeah, I'll give consent and I'll even bring my son or daughter in, but I have to work, and we get it. So what we're doing on March 1st is because we're staggering the day. So we'll have early morning into the evening appointments. The nurses are able to stagger. And so part of the reason why we can't completely stagger when any schools are in session is because we still need nurses in the buildings. So we have, like Monday, for example, we would have loved to have staggered, but we were still in person 6/12. So we need the nurses 6/12. They came over afterwards. The high school nurses came over after, but we didn't have enough woman power woman and manpower to be able to stagger throughout the day. But March 1st, because no students are in session, we're able to stagger it and have appointments early in the morning, late in the evening. And if we continue beyond March 1st, then we'll have conversations about what that could look like as well.
Okay, thanks. We did have a few quarantine questions, which I'm sure, you know, over the course of all of this, you've probably addressed. But just, you know, if you could just give the like general guidelines about how and who is quarantined and when, you know, like what are the rules governing that? I guess that's it. That's the question.
Okay, sure. So Putnam County Department of Health follows the New York State Department of Health guidelines. They decide a close contact is a student or anyone who is within 6 feet or less for more than 10 minutes of a positive individual. Then we get into proximate contacts, which is where there's differences between Putnam and Westchester counties. So for example, if there is a positive student, a positive individual in a classroom, Putnam County would say that the students in that classroom who have been there for more than X number of minutes, they are proximate contacts and they need to quarantine. Westchester would say, well, we look at that differently, and proximate contacts, we would not consider anybody else, you know, beyond that 6 feet, let's say, contacts who need to quarantine. So that we've asked the Department of Health a number of times about this. They're very responsive, and they gave us the guidance from the New York State Department of Health that outlines this. And so that's where the difference is between Putnam and Westchester County, who they're considering as proximate contacts that would need to quarantine or not.
Okay, that's helpful. The only other sort of category of questions that came in sort of relate to the hybrid and full remote models. One question was whether full remote is going to be an option for the rest of the year. I suppose that question is being asked with the idea that perhaps, hopefully, at some point, all the kids would be back in school. And I think the question is, if you like remote, which this person does, you know, can that continue till the end of the year?
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And that would be great if we were able to bring everybody back, you know, before the end of the year. That would be a happy problem to solve in terms of all remote and how we would handle that. I don't know, Dr. Banlow, I mean, I would say that if we have asked parents to commit for a semester. So it makes sense that as a district, we would commit for a semester for all remote sections, as if we are, you know, if in terms of the for the all remote, the students who are typically not in the or currently in the all remote learning mode for this year.
I think that's a really good question. I think we want to meet with our leadership team to talk about it, but it's definitely, I would think it's a possibility, but I definitely want to get some input from our principals. And you agree, Dr. Gosh? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. A couple quick people came in with questions. I think that it's at the elementary level, or I don't know if it includes Wells. It wasn't specific, but just asking the question of if you have hybrid students, and you know, obviously full remote are getting 5 days of educational interaction, and the kids are in hybrid, you know, why aren't they allowed to Zoom in to classes from home? And I know that's sort of been addressed at different school levels before, but if you could sort of shine any light on that.
Ms. Cunningham, did they say which building? Because I know it's different for each.
No, but I do know, like from reading it, it was my impression that it was elementary. So it was my impression it was either JFK or CV Star.
Okay. So thanks to the collaboration with the CV Star teachers, starting now, they will be streaming 50%, at least 50% live for synchronous instruction for ELA and math, and that will progress then to science and social studies as well. K2, you know, honestly, I feel like it's a bit of a different, I don't want to say animal, but it's a bit of a different thing. And we've discussed this in the teaching and learning subcommittee about how much screen time is good for students at the K2 level. What's the cost benefit that would come from that? I know we felt very strongly in this subcommittee that, you know, the in-person days are gold, right? That what you have a teacher with half of the students, and especially at the K2 level, they're in front of you for the whole day, and you get a lot of individualized attention. You know, there was also feeling that if at the K2 level, given sort of the cost benefit of what students might be able to gain from instruction remotely and the hybrid remote days, that it might not be as beneficial to have synchronous time for the hybrid remote days. But we did have the morning meeting time and intervention enrichment time where students were able to stream in as well. But if that's something that the board would like us to look at, you know, we're happy to have those discussions again in the teaching and learning subcommittee. You know, I still, just in my professional opinion, feel like it's a tough thing, K2, to get students to stream in. And I'm saying that as an educator and, you know, as a parent of a 6-year-old.
Yeah, and it may be possible, like I said, it wasn't specific, but I just figured from what was written that it was, you know, and it may have been CV Star, because I agree with you on the elementary level. One other question or suggestion that was made was whether or not it's been considered to limit electives, which would be in Wells and I suppose the high school, to limit electives so that there's more teachers available and time available to focus on core classes. I don't know if that's something that's been considered or is even something that, you know, is possible.
So a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, initially at the middle school, we had it so when students came in, they were attending their core classes. When they were home, they were attending their elective classes. And there were, you know, some mixed reviews on that. We ended up changing that because we felt like for a number of reasons. And so now we have, you know, the full 9-period day at the middle school, let's say. A couple of issues I see with maybe pulling electives and not having those at all. I mean, first, it's outlined in the units of study that students would need to take throughout middle school. Those courses are there, right? Things like art and music and physical education even, which is a state mandate. So that's one thing. The other piece is that some students, that's why they come to school, right? They, you know, so to limit that, I feel like we're limiting then students' opportunity to learn by not having those other courses. But with all that said, you know, again, if there are models that have worked other places and we agree that, you know, we need to look at this again, I'm happy through the subcommittee models to throw these ideas at the wall and see what works. And if it means more in-person instructional time for students, then, you know, we can definitely talk about what the pros and cons of that would be and have a deliberative process in thinking that through.
And that's the richness of those subcommittees, Dr. Gosh, that we really cover those things and we have really good conversations.
All right, last thing that I have, which did come up in a couple emails, so I did want to raise it, is the question of whether or not it's ever been considered for Brewster High School to go full remote so that it opens up space for K through 8. Although I would imagine that there would still be a teacher and staff issue on that, but that came up a couple of times, so I wanted to just raise that.
So that is another question that could go back to our teaching and learning subcommittee. In the beginning of our process, we were committed to K-12 because we were worried about all of our students. We wanted to see all of our students whenever we could, particularly not only for the educational piece, but to make sure they're okay. And I know everybody knows what I mean by that. So, but that's certainly something that could be discussed with all of the important pieces looked at.
And Dr. Banlow, I just add that what we have discussed numerous times is that you could really make an argument for each building to be in full time and why it's so important, right? K2, they're emergent readers and writers. In the intermediate level, they're reading to learn. The middle school, there's so much going on, you know, both emotionally and physically and academically at that level. And then the high school, they need to graduate, right? So we can make the argument that if we can't have everybody in all the time, so why each building might have priority over the other. I would just say, you know, the high school, we can almost, yes, absolutely talk about it in the subcommittee. I worry about getting kids across the finish line. We've heard that a number of students are disengaged, that, you know, if they can't come and see the social component, learning is supposed to be a social construct, right? And if that can't happen in a physical learning environment, we've seen students of all age groups sort of disengage. So we have the fewest amount of time left with the high school students to get them to where we need them to be. So that would just be something that I would ask the subcommittee to think about and kick around and consider as we're talking these ideas through.
Yeah, it would seem difficult, to say the least, to designate one group as having priority over the others. So that's all that I have. You know, I would just add that just a note of appreciation that we did receive a lot of emails today, but I think nearly every single one of them started with thanking, you know, Dr. Banlow and Dr. Gosh and everyone else involved, the teachers, the staff, the faculty, everyone who's working so hard. So that's appreciated. I just wanted to note that. And if I missed something or anybody else missed something, we tried. We tried.
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham. And I also want to add that Trustee Mrs. Santos reminded me that if we didn't cover something tonight, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, to your building principal, so we make sure that we answer your question. And if you do want to get involved, please do. And if you don't have the time, just make sure you continue to send us those thoughts, and we'll make sure it goes to the right subcommittee. And as things change, we will continue to progress. And please know we're looking to the future, and we want every student back when we are able to do that. So thank you. Thank you, Ms. Masika. Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham.
So just, I know I had a couple questions, but I wanted to just see if anyone else on the board had any additional follow-up questions. I know a lot was covered, but if anyone had anything they still wanted to address on this matter. I know they're going to come back to us a couple times as the year continues, but did anyone have anything else right now?
Yeah, I have a couple questions if I could. First of all, obviously, again, can't say it enough. Thank you all very much. Thank you everybody who's in the district for everything that's going on, whether it's, you know, the challenges of teaching students or trying to figure out how to get students in front of the kids or getting them to the building or getting them fed. I mean, there's just so many different avenues to this. Can't say thank you enough. And I know that the entire staff and the administration is committed to finding that balance, right, between safety and keeping the kids safe, and our numbers for the positivity and the testing results are great. And so obviously we are doing something right. And I don't think that should be taken for granted, that even with 2 cohorts of students coming in and out and teachers and everyone else in the building, that our positivity rate, although it's not completely dependent on what the schools happen and people can bring it into the building, you know, we are obviously working, the work that's being done is being successful. I think it's important to note that although a number of people did mention the idea of potentially having the high school, you know, go fully remote so that the other grades could do that, that there were also parents who, you know, went the other way, and that there isn't a consensus necessarily in the community. I think your point is extremely well taken, that we shouldn't be, you know, potentially sending one group to being remote without a choice at the point of others. But I think the community does recognize that every group sort of has that in-person need for different reasons and for different styles. So I thank you for that. A couple questions. First of all, I know one of the things that it's come up a lot now, and it's been around, and it was mentioned a few things. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the relationship between the CDC, the Putnam County Department of Health, the State Education Department? Sort of, you know, a lot of different acronym groups are kind of coming out with their guidance or their opinion, and sort of what, I know you definitely touched on it, but sort of, you know, if it comes from the CDC, you think that's the federal government, that's sort of the overreaching sort of agency that would handle public health. But sort of what do we do when we get a recommendation from the CDC that potentially goes against what we're hearing from either the Department of Health or the Education Department?
I want to answer that first, and I'll let Dr. Gosh jump in if I left anything out. So there is a lot of great research that we've all looked at. There's a lot of great information from the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics. But all that information gets funneled to the New York State Department of Health. So that is the guide that we look at, and that the Department of Health throughout the state look at. And we also have to follow whatever's coming from the state education department. So it's truly the New York State Department of Health that is our guide. Dr. Gosh, did I say that correctly? Okay, because as our new COVID coordinator, a role you never thought you'd have, I just want to make sure I'm answering it well. Okay.
All right, great, thank you. Second question would be, can you talk a little bit about, and I completely understand the point about K2 and having the struggles with them and trying to keep, our youngest students in front of a screen for an extended period of time. But if we do have parents who are listening who find that their kids, either at that level or at any level, are really are struggling, can we just sort of talk a little bit about what avenues are there, what options parents might have? Obviously, almost everybody's working. There are very few people who have the option of becoming full-time stay-at-home teachers while their kids are on a remote or a hybrid model. But just, kind of any kind of guidance or communication pathways for those parents who are really finding that their kids are struggling.
So I'd like to jump in first, and then Dr. Gosh, please add anything. I had two situations just this past week and the week before, where we had two students we were very concerned about, parents were very concerned about. And I want to thank the teachers, the guidance counselors, all of the staff, support staff and principals at each building, our PPS staff. We've had Zoom meetings with parents to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to support our students. And that is what helped us to lead to, many of the phases that Dr. Gosh talked about. And Dr. Gosh, is there anything you want to jump in with?
Just to sort of reiterate some of the points that you said, we have a school counselor in each building. That's including our K2 building and our 3-5 building. They're phenomenal resources. We have a psychologist and a social worker in each building as well. So what happens is, what a parent should do is reach out to the classroom teacher to see if their classroom-based interventions, our teachers know their stuff. If they feel like that student needs additional support, they can refer to that student to the problem-solving team through our MTSS structure. So that goes to the assistant principal or the principal. That there's a problem-solving team meeting where all those specialists that I mentioned before are at the table and are saying, okay, what are the specific needs of this particular student? What can we possibly do? What other interventions and supports can we provide in order to help this student be successful or be more successful? And then there's a process that's followed where there's follow-up after 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what type of goals are listed. So we have excellent resources, and we have the structures in place through our MTSS approach. And we would strongly encourage any parent who's worried about their son or daughter, if they haven't done so already, to reach out to us. If you've done so already and you're still worried, reach out to us again to see what other supports that we can, what other supports can be provided.
Great, thank you. And then just my last question, I think this might be the easiest one. I front-loaded all the hard questions. The first slide about the snow day, I didn't quite understand how that goes or what exactly that information was coming, how we're addressing that, or why, if we have 5 snow days, if there's a change in the instructional system with our use of only 4 so far.
Is it okay for me to try and explain it? So the calendar is confusing.
It's complicated to us too. Go ahead, go back to that slide.
So I don't know if this is, you can even see this. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay, so each year we ask you to approve a calendar, and we say, if 5 snow days are used, no change. If no snow days are used, then these are now instructional days. So basically we're here, we've used 4 snow days. So these days are now all in session, 4-5, 4-6, 4-7, which is the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after spring break. And 5/27, I believe, is attached to Memorial Day. So the idea is that while they weren't instructional days in December and February, they will be instructional days here in April and May. And so it just happened to work out that the days that are now instructional days that would not have been in-person days if we had snow days, it balances out among the cohorts in terms of the number of snow days that were had by each cohort and the number of in-person instructional days that will now take place in April and May as a result of the calendar. I don't know if any of that made sense, and this is, but that was what I was trying to say in that first slide.
So I apologize. I don't get it. So I would think if we only use 5 snow days, we've only used 4 so far, there shouldn't be any change to the calendar.
After 5 snow days, there's no change to the calendar. So maybe the other way to look at it is, if we had no snow days, basically we'd be off all these days: 4/6, 4/7, 4/5, 5/27, and 5/28. Now because we had, if we only have 1 snow day, then we'd be off on these days, because we have 182 student days total, and that includes includes a snow. Ms. Truel, you help with the calendar. Is there a better way to explain this? I'm sure there's a better way, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there, or anybody else with the calendar that can?
Michelle, do you mind if I jump in?
Sure. Thank you, Jim.
Go ahead,
Jim.
Jim.
Just so if we used these as remote learning days, the class would be in session during these snow days, but we would be remote. But instead, we're taking them as snow days, and then we're in person in the spring. So it's in person in the spring versus remote now. And so by doing it this way, we're opting for in person rather than all remote for everybody.
I think that was a pretty good, simple way to say it, Jim.
I'm just gonna, do the other board members get this? Because if I'm the only one, then I'll stop and figure it out. I'll figure it out on my own.
No, Eric, it's not, it's complex. It really is. The calendar is.
You know, we'll have a work session, Eric.
Eric, look at it this way. There were extra vacation days. If we had no snow days, there would have been 5 extra vacation days for the kids to have. Just days off from school. But because we have snow days, those now become school days. Did it help? If not, we can talk later. We can talk all night after.
I think. All right, for another time then. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right, so thank you for the thoughtful answers, especially the ones I understood. But that was all I had. Thank you very much.
You said the last one was the easiest.
It's okay, Eric. You could just call your kid and have your kid explain it to you. It'll be fine. If I could ask a couple quick questions. First, I want to thank everybody for the information being presented, and for the parents that put out the questions and the information out there. And I'll say it a billion times. Most likely, Dr. Gosh has a bunch of people working on it. So I got to get a T-shirt made up like that. I want to reach, if anybody does have help, and I don't want to belittle it, please reach out to the school, to your teacher, to anybody. I mean, we can't put down how much physical, mental trauma, mental health issues that the kids are going through. So please, anybody needs any help, don't say, well, I don't know what to do. Please, reach out first and foremost. I know at a number of early presentations, Mr. Fryer and the building people showed some information on what they have done, the way they added space here, put a door there. Our beautiful art space in JFK is now learning space. So, I mean, they have been making, as many alterations as they can, but of course, there's always more that, can be done. My main question revolves around the testing. I greatly appreciate that, we're probably the only one doing the testing, and we're also, which I'm sure is making Victor happy, we're doing it financially right. We're doing it in-house with stuff, our own training and what's going through the district. My own kid, went in yesterday. So, I know it's helpful because if the district area goes up and spike, that's what's going to be able to keep us in school. The fact that we're preemptive and we're doing it in advance. I would make a suggestion possibly that you know, we want to increase the pool. And last time I saw, there's still a fair amount of people that have not consented. It's not that they've said no, they just haven't selected. So we would need people to increase the pool. My suggestion revolved around the way we did the sports program. I was looking through information over at Somers, and their piece of the sports program was, well, they also don't want to test every single sports program individually. They did require every single sports program to consent. So they're part of the random drawing. So that would help us in our building numbers. And if anything comes up with our sport teams, we could say, well, we also tested, 20% of our sport teams, and their reaction rate was 0.2 or whatever it is. So we'd have more legs to stand on, so we don't have to miss anything with this incredibly short season. So if there's any way for us to, put that in there, that would protect everybody, across. And
yes, we're working on, Mr. Seaman, we're definitely going to be doing this. We're working on that.
Thank you. And once again, I just want to reach out. If anybody, please feel free to, contact the board, anybody for anything that you need. Once again, there's no such, as my mother used to yell at me all the time, there's no such thing as a dumb question unless you say it in a bad way. But she meant that towards me. So I appreciate all the effort. Thank you.
And one of the things I also wanted to mention to the board is in my meeting on Monday with the Putnam County Superintendents, we talked about the original yellow, orange, red zones. That was something concrete we could look at. We were able to look at that is no longer in existence. So we asked, can they give us a metric that we would know when it's okay that we can bring everybody back? So that was something that was pressed on Monday. So we're hoping that that information might come to us as we move forward.
I just want to say a couple of things. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I keep first, in the presentation, thank you for addressing that the gaps is on the radar. So absolutely, kids at K-12 there's gaps in their education. They're not getting stuff, whatever's going on with every child, whether they can't tune in that day or they're sitting in their chair at home, but they're not getting the content, whatever anyone's story is. Thank you for acknowledging that there are gaps, there's going to continue to be gaps, and that it needs to be addressed. So that was great to hear, plus everything else, of course, that you shared. And I just wanted to ask, you had mentioned clubs, the before after school programs, we had all that stuff. Would those be in person? Because no one's really in school, right? I mean, we're limited capacity at that. I mean, there's less people, less kids. So could that be handled in where the kids are in school, since there's more space, and that could give a little bit more social interaction, on let's say they're a hybrid in-person day, and that they could do a club and maybe it meets twice a week to alternate with A and B. But it seems like there's more space after school, and that possibly that could be just another social interaction. I don't know if that was considered.
So one of the things I want to mention before Dr. Goss jumps in is we're not just thinking about our athletes, we're thinking about our performing arts babies too, and it's so important to them. So one of the things we are looking at, and I hope I'm not revealing things I shouldn't, is a performing arts, is a play in the PAC that's socially distanced, and our medical director's looking at that very carefully with Ms. Horler. So that's just one piece. And Dr. Goss, you want to talk a little bit about the clubs?
Sure, yes, Mrs. Horler and I had this conversation, maybe it was at the teaching and learning subcommittee. We had it there, and there are some contractual issues, but I think I know that Mrs. Horler has been incredibly creative throughout this entire process. So it's a priority. We can figure out, I know there's always going to be the students that are virtual, but maybe this can bring more students into the building. So we'll add that to our list of different options to look at.
And especially as the weather gets nicer, we can start to think about more things outside for the kids.
Yeah, that's true too. Okay, and then I know you mentioned for the community to reach out, but in terms of joining any of these subcommittees in the reentry group again, will we send out a letter kind of specifically saying what and how? Okay, just wanted to make sure that.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was it for me on that. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone else. Okay. Oh,
Thank
Francine, go ahead. Yep.
Just thank you. You don't have to hear me at the next meeting. So
Thank you.
Thanks for getting those IEP kids in. That's awesome.
Thank you. And I have to say thank you to the team. It's a team effort.
Okay, good. Are we good to move on then to the next presentation, which is Brewster Vision 2025 update?
I think it's equity.
Oh, you know what? It is equity. Sorry, my notes that I took are covering that item. I apologize. Yes, absolutely. Number 3, equity update, please. Thank you.
Sure. So this will be briefer than the previous presentation. Just a quick update. This week, we have 2 planning sessions. One already happened on Monday. It was our root cause analysis. We had over 30 participants. There are staff members, K-12. There are a few community members and parents on there. And we have spent the last couple of meetings looking at our academic data district-wide. The root cause analysis teams have some follow-up between now and the next root cause meeting, where they'll be looking at building specific workbooks. So we were able to see some general trends, but we have more questions about what this looks like at each grade level, what sort of growth is happening or not happening among students, and how we can use that to draw out some conclusions. On Thursday, we continue with our administrative, culturally responsive, sustaining educational practices training. So we look forward to that. This is in addition to developing our equity acumen. It also helps us grow as a leadership unit. And the goal of these sessions is not for the administrative team to see equity as something separate, but instead to be a lens that we look at and use for all of our decision making. And the second update has to do with our equity collaborative. So if you remember, in the summer, we put out an all call for anyone who was interested in being part of the equity work to come together. We met a few times and we had some sub collaborative groups. So at those first 2 meetings, we had asked parents and community members what it is they hope to get from equity work, because we have this work going on with NYU, but what are some other things? So we identified certain topics. We had some sub-collaborative meetings. We're reinstituting those sub-collaborative meetings, again, with working between the sub-collaborative and collaborative structure to have the macro conversations along with the micro. And we look forward to continuing that work with our parents and our community partners.
And also just want to thank the board. They will be having a retreat. They'll be joining Mr. Carlson, Dr. Harrington, and Dr. Gosh and I, and they'll be digging into the equity curriculum and also doing a book study. So I want to thank the board for also committing to this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have the Brewster Vision 2025 update.
So I promise this will be super brief. We are going to be I'm being optimistic. We are going to be getting together in the fall in person because the work is so important. It was music to my ears to hear about a multi-year approach to helping with any academic achievement gaps that we're going to be worried about with our students. So we'll continue to send out information. We have a separate place on the website. Thank you, Jim Trelaw, for Brewster Vision 2025. So look at that, and we'll continue to send out reminders about when we will be meeting. So we hope people will get involved in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we have a discussion on live streaming. And I guess I can just introduce this. I know, Mr. Trelaw, you're going to share a little bit about the work and research you've done. And actually, I'll let you start, and then I'll come back in on the tail end of it. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so let me go over here to this. Just this is live streaming is something that we have talked about for a very long time in Brewster for a number of different reasons. So we've been trying to get it for athletics, just for parents that want to be able to see a game that they can't. Maybe they have to be at home. Extended family, friends, being able to see that. And that goes for all the other types of events. Right now, it is a must with the pandemic, with the limitations on any games and the number of spectators that can come to those. it does make it accessible to all. So for whatever reason, if somebody can't make it to any event that they want to be a part of, whether it's a board meeting or another event, that this just makes it accessible. We can use it for athletics, for concerts, plays, musicals, any of the board meetings, for graduation. So having the ability to live stream really does expand our ability to make events accessible for lots of different folks in the community. One of the things when the Ensemble is the service that we have signed up for. It is a service through the Lower Hudson RIC that allows us to have both hosting, the closed captioning on videos, and also allows for the live streaming. So there's a couple other districts that use things like Local Live and Huddle on their for their athletic events. Those are where you mount a camera, say in your gymnasium, out on the field, et cetera. And then those companies have folks that staff those cameras when you say, hey, I have this event starting at this time, and they man them remotely to be able to stream those events. That's very limiting because you have to pay for the camera to put up in those where those events are happening. By doing it this way, it provides us, we use our own cameras, our own staff. We can be able to be out at the hockey rink and be able to stream that. We could be at the a gymnastics event, a swimming event. So lots of different flexibility there. And then also the hosting that goes along with it provides us the ability to host our videos in a more professional looking way, controls from any ads or upcoming videos that you might see by our current hosting in YouTube. Not that we're entirely moving away from that to Ensemble, but we will be doing that. The last question that really we're talking about here is about streaming for the board meeting. So right now we have 80 or 90 other community members that are able to participate in this board meeting by signing in and allowing them to use Zoom. And a number of other districts are doing the same thing. They're all using Zoom. A lot of the other local districts are also then streaming, they're live streaming to YouTube. And it does provide just that extra ability, a different way for people to be able to participate in the board meeting and be able to, they don't have to sign their name or an email address. They could just watch it as it's happening. We can still be able to get numbers and get an idea of how many people watch that board meeting, but just provides a little bit of extra access. So that's kind of the gist of where we got to this point of having it. And the question really is just whether or not we want to use this service while we are going to be using it for athletic events and other performances moving forward, whether we want to start using it for the board meetings.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to also add a couple things in terms of, so I think for the district and in the times we are in, this platform that you found, I think it fits. I think it's great. I like the fact that we can manage it ourselves. And in terms of board meetings, I know you also shared, a lot of other districts use YouTube, which comments can't be controlled and contained. And I did actually speak to legal on this because I did want to get some more clarity, because I know already that, when we are in person and the public comes in and we're all there together, there's rules around how a meeting is managed and how comments are managed and shared with the board and what can be said and shared. Some things are confidential in nature, and we have to protect our students and our staff, and there's different things, right? And kind of civil discourse in that arena. And once things get into a streaming comment, the rules go out the window, but that's how a board meeting is. We need to maintain order and those rules. So it was important for me with your research to find a platform that would allow us to maintain the integrity of a board meeting if we were going to use that platform in any sort of live streaming, where we could manage in a very fair way for all of our community to communicate and interact with the board. And we've established that, I think, now where everyone can email us. We are reading the comments, and when we're back in person, people can do both. They'll still be able to email us, they'll be able to come in person and share live, and the live stream really is just another way for the community to watch us deliberate and do our work in public. So I like this platform, and I think it works within what education law and our school district policy defines, and how we can conduct our meetings. So I think it's a great platform. And I think you mentioned, right, that it's aidable, is it right, by BOCES as well. So that's a plus. And let me just see if I have anything in my notes as well that I may have missed. No, I think that's it, other than the fact that in my homework, it really was clear to me that the open meetings law needs some revisions for anybody who's in government, because we are all in a virtual time now and doing so many things virtually that the laws really need to get updated, because we're trying to follow laws that apply to a different setting and context, which is being in person. So as much as we can, I do think that this platform would be a great suggestion and something that we should adopt and use for our board meetings as well as for the district. But yeah, so that's all I wanted to share on that topic. I don't know if anybody on the board has any questions about this, but I think it's something we should go ahead with doing.
Just a quick question, if I could.
Yeah.
Jim, going back to the snow days. No, I'm just kidding. So is there a difference between like setting up a webcam that just constantly transmits and live streaming? And have we considered sort of, like I know some of the fields in other areas will put it like on a backstop. It's just continually pushing out the images if you have the address, which obviously it's good for security. I don't know if it's recorded, and that's a whole other cost and issue to come up with, but just setting up a webcam that potentially, sits on the backstop of the softball field or the baseball field or different spots on the soccer field, something like that. Where would that fit in kind of this sort of, what we're looking to do going forward?
Well, there can be live cams for any number of things that are available to the public, and that is something that could be available if that would be one view of a given field, and it might be one way to access it, but it's on all the time. So that would be, and again, like you said, for security, this would be something, well, maybe that would be part of our camera system that is actually public. And so the difference in terms of a live stream is that is connected to a specific event that we are then saying we are going to live stream at this time. And what they see otherwise would be this. So I'm going to share just really quickly. This is the web page, kind of the way that it would look. We had set this up as just a temporary example to say, hey, this is where the live streaming would be. This is the link where people would go to, and for board meetings, and we would have one for either this would be a specific thing that would be for all events. This is our live streaming page, or we would have one for the board meeting, one for athletics and things like that. So it's something that we hadn't really considered, but that might be a potential. I think this is kind of our first step in terms of saying, hey, we are having an episodic event-driven live streaming. And if we say, hey, maybe there's a need on these fields that we could incorporate adding, purchasing cameras, being able to go ahead and have a network cable out to there where we can then be able to stream all the time for people to be able to see what's going on. But there are also then, if that's a field that the public uses, then there are also privacy issues of just being able to watch at any point of what's happening on that field. So possibilities, but certainly things that would need to be discussed more in depth.
Okay, sorry if I missed it, but just briefly. So any events that we were potentially going to live stream, would be an employee, a school employee that would be manning the camera and handling those responsibilities?
Yeah.
Okay. Any talk of, you know, if it's a sports game that one of the parents steps up and does it, or is that, I know that we're sort of down the road a little bit on these kinds of questions, but
yeah.
You know, if we're going to talk about starting to make a commitment to live streaming events, it's probably not crazy to sort of think about how we're going to capture that. And
yeah, I think that those are certainly possibilities, so that we could, with the capacity that we have to be able to live stream a number of different events, and with so many different sports teams that we have and events that we could do, it would be something to work towards, of saying, okay, well, how do we live stream, who gets to do it, and with what devices. And because again, this is sharing out this, it would be a device that has the code to that live stream that is specific. So certainly something that we could work towards, to say, we want to make sure that if we're going to live stream every sporting event, then how are we going to be able to get enough staff or volunteers to be able to do it? So certainly something down the road that we could explore, who would do it and what protections do we have to have in place for how they would have access to those streaming keys.
And if I could jump in, Jim, we'd also have to certainly run it past the board's legal team, because, you know, in other districts there were issues with, you know, who could do it. So we would just need to double check.
Yeah.
I just had a question, and I'm sorry if you said it and I missed it. I understand it's live streamed, so is it also recorded? Because like for Huddle, you can go back and you can get a recording of a game. Kids use it for highlight reels, etc. So is that something that can be done with this platform?
Yes.
I know we talked, it's BOCES aidable. What is the general cost involved in something like this?
What we have available is a certain capacity for the amount of video that is being stored on the site, and we have kind of an introductory 200 gigs that's available. And the streaming, if we were to live stream but not record, as Carrie was mentioning, we could have 5 different streams going on at once, and there isn't any added cost. So the managing and having the streams is not where any cost comes in. It's more the amount of storage for the number of videos that we keep, and it's a matter of how long we would keep them. And you know, as that builds up, then it's more and more storage for those videos. Whereas on YouTube, it's free, but we don't have as much control over what it looks like, how it's presented. So that's again something where we're in our initial stages. It does provide us all these opportunities for athletics, lots of other events, and the possibility for board meetings. How we manage the number of videos moving forward is something that we would, you know, we'll deal with as we go along. But the added costs are really just the amount of storage space for the videos that for the recordings that we have.
Okay, just that, and then I guess the initial startup of equipment and such. But yeah, because I know, like from doing plays for a number of years, when we buy the rights, there's a big piece of that says you're not allowed to broadcast, you're not allowed with this. And I don't know if there's anything related to, like when we do music for shows, do we get releases and stuff? I don't know, but I guess that's a legal side. But my other question would be, if it's school staff and like Eric suggested, maybe parents, is there a way to possibly involve our students? Because I know like at the plays, they run the sound, they do the lights.
Yeah.
And then Ms. P was offering classes on things related to that. So hopefully this can evolve into broadcasting or some type of class we could offer in the high school, you know, by pointing off this, you know, like multi-purpose out of one thing.
Indeed. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility that We have a lot of great photographers within the district, from students that are participating in the yearbook club or the Bearfax, or doing some of the different reporting. So it would be nice to be able to tap into that and give kids authentic experiences in, you know, using, doing some broadcasting with the cameras.
Thank you.
Jim, I don't think we also mentioned though that even with this live, if we're using it for a meeting, we still would, for example, right now, we would still be doing a Zoom platform.
Yes.
Right. And even when we are in person, like today we had a snow day, so we still chose to go ahead with the meeting, but had school not gotten, you know, if it wasn't canceled and we were in school, we would have also been in person doing our meeting. And even in that setting with us in person, we still would have the Zoom feature plus the live stream, because we would need to, for example, have invite other presenters and students, and they're not there physically with us. It's just the board. So they need to be brought into the meeting through the Zoom platform.
Yes.
Right. So just to also add that piece. Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay. Oh, wait. Daisy, are you speaking or?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious, and the chart that had all the districts, so I thought that YouTube was the majority one, but I thought Peekskill had a different one. What's the difference with that one than with the YouTube?
Peekskill uses Ensemble. So that's the platform that we're using.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's the service that we've signed up for. And there was one other right below that. Bedford uses another one called My VR Spot, which we also tested out and found that Ensemble was just a better platform and one that we can purchase through BOCES so that we can get aid on it. So.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. We can move on now to our final presentation of the evening, 2021-2022 budget presentation, state aid. Mr. Carlson, you get to finish us off with the highlight of the night.
I will do my best to keep everyone awake.
Thank you.
Okay, can everyone see my screen? Yes?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so last we spoke about state aid in early January, the governor had yet to provide us with his executive budget proposal. So his proposal came out on January 19th, and we've been reviewing it ever since. When we last spoke about state aid again in early January, we understood that about $4 billion of federal funds was allocated to New York State. And we were pleased to learn on January 19th that the governor included $2.9 million of federal funds and directed towards Brewster. But of course, in typical state fashion, they've removed $2.9 million of state aid from our left pocket and replaced it with $2.9 million of federal aid in our right pocket. So ultimately, we're held harmless. So that's great news. But as Michelle always points out, I'm incapable of providing good news without having a caveat attached to it. So this federal aid, there are strings attached to it. We must apply for it through block grants, which basically just explains how we're spending the proceeds. Of course, we're using them to continue our operations. And with that, we have caution. So we are receiving a one-time federal revenue in 21-22. It's being directed to us in its entirety. And the irony is that the New York State Controller has a common audit finding, and that citation says, do not use non-recurring revenues to fund recurring operating expenditures. And that's exactly what the governor is doing in his executive budget proposal. So again, we're allocated $2.9 million. That's great, but we're also concerned about where the next $2.9 million will come from in 22-23 and beyond. Another thing of importance in the governor's proposal is the proposal to consolidate 11 state aid categories, including transportation aid, BOCES aid, and instructional materials aid into a single category called services aid. So I'll get into it a little bit later on in the presentation, but when we talk about state aid, we always talk about it in this one huge pot of money, but there's actually many components to it. So with the governor's proposal for the third consecutive year to consolidate aid categories, it raises some concern. So this is the third year in a row that he's proposed this. It was rejected in each of the last 2 years. But it's important to note that this year is different than those past 2 years because the governor, a Democrat, has now Democrat control of the Senate and control of the Assembly. So it may stick this year, this third year that he's making this proposal. Now, the reason why he's attempting to consolidate these aid categories is so that he has the ability to limit future aid increases, most likely at 2%. 2% is the magic number, which eliminates the incentive for school districts to share through BOCES services. And also it's concerning because things like transportation aid that we receive on bus purchases will no longer be received. So, throughout the state, there is concern, and I'm sure there will be lobbying efforts to ask the Senate and Assembly to reconsider this when they negotiate the final enacted budget, which is due April 1st. So again, our state aid, we actually have 6 major categories that we receive aid on. Foundation aid in that blue bar is the largest component. Excess cost aid is funds that we receive for instruction of our special needs students. Building aid for construction costs. Transportation aid, obviously for transportation operations. BOCES aid for the incentive to continue to share in services. Instructional materials aid is a very small amount that we receive for textbooks, workbooks, and computers, software, things of that nature. So the governor's proposal, again, for the third year in a row, is to consolidate those last 3 aid categories into a single category called services aid. So I'm going to go through each of these different aid categories. It's we've gone through this in Budget 101, so this is a very brief recap of that. So foundation aid makes up the largest part of our state aid. About 43% of it. Some of the inputs in the calculation, and each of these calculations are in some cases dozens of lines long, if not over 100. And here are a couple of the inputs. So adjusted gross income of Brewster residents, which is derived from New York State Department of Taxation. So at this time, as people are completing their income tax returns, if you recall on your New York State income tax return, it asks you to enter a school code. And when you enter that school code, it obviously designates Brewster School District. And that's how the state is able to determine the adjusted gross income of Brewster School District residents. Property value, total square miles, poverty count, and enrollment. And of course, poverty count and enrollment, or poverty count, I should say, is based on US Census data that's nearly a decade old. So foundation aid for next year is expected to remain frozen again. So this is the third year in a row that they're freezing our largest aid component. And the state is intent on reapportioning aid to higher need districts through additional funding formulas. So also discussed in Budget 101 is the state's inability to actually implement the ridiculously long foundation aid formula that it created decades ago. So in this next slide, we'll show what we actually are. Here's an example of a funding formula for foundation aid. And this slide shows what we actually receive by this blue line as compared to what we were promised and what's spelled out in this foundation aid formula. So each year we're actually shortchanged by the state by about $4.4 million. It's a zero-sum game. So there are some districts now that are actually benefiting from the freeze in foundation aid. All throughout the state, it varies from district to district. It's not a regional issue, it's a statewide issue. And the longer it's gone on, the more politicized it's become. So there really is no end in sight. There will likely never be a full implementation of foundation aid as it was intended, nearly 2 decades ago. Moving on to our next state aid component, excess cost aid. Again, these are funds they receive to offset expenditures incurred in providing instruction to our special needs students. The major determinants in the calculation include our in-district public and private school placements, all of which remain consistent with the prior year, so our excess cost aid is expected to remain the same next year. Building aid makes up about 14% of our total aid, and this is money that we receive to help pay for construction or renovation costs. We just completed a major capital project, and we're now receiving the building aid on that. So that helps us pay for the principal and interest costs on our construction debt. So some of the determinants in building aid: allowable construction project costs, useful life of the space, pupil capacities, statewide average interest rates. So what was surprising to me this year when I reviewed the state aid run is that our building aid ratios have increased significantly. So we haven't had any new projects added or expiring this year. However, the aid rate that is applied to our construction costs increased. So that's a good thing. So we're actually receiving more building aid this year than we did last year, just as a result of an increase in that reimbursement rate. However, this actually is also a zero-sum game in that building aid changes have an inverse impact on the tax cap calculation. So when building aid goes up, the tax cap goes down and vice versa. So you'll see in our next presentation 2 weeks from now, the impact that the increase in our building aid is going to have on our tax cap, and it's going to drive our tax cap even lower than originally expected. Transportation aid makes up 18% of our total state aid. It includes allowable operational costs, and it also excludes non-allowable operational costs. So for example, we do not receive state aid for transportation of students in grades K through 8 that live within 2 miles of the school, or for students in grades 9 through 12 that live within 3 miles of the school. It's also based on our total square miles, and of course our bus purchases also factor into transportation aid. So we're anticipating a slight increase in transportation aid. Just like building aid, the aid ratio increased slightly from this year, and our operations remain consistent. And at the end, I'll speak to some of the concern that we have with transportation aid for this current 2021 school year that we're in that we will not be receiving transportation aid based on the period that we were closed at the end of the 1920 school year. So the aid is actually provided in the subsequent year after the expenses are incurred. So because we were closed from March 13th to June 30th of the 1920 school year, we're likely going to have our state aid for this current year, 2021, deducted for that proportionate amount that we were not providing transportation to students. Now, there are, of course, lobbying efforts going on to try to restore that aid, but at this point, it appears that we're going to be shortchanged in this current year budget for that. Lastly, or second to last, BOCES aid makes up 8% of our total aid, and this, of course, is the original shared service incentive provided by the state to increase participation in BOCES COSERs or co-services that many districts in the region participate in. As Jim was mentioning earlier in the about live streaming, because it's a service that's provided to multiple districts through BOCES, we receive preferable pricing on it because of the competition, and also we receive state aid on it. So some of the determinants that go into BOCES aid, of course, is the BOCES aid, COSER participation, allowable costs versus non-allowable costs. And it's important to note also that special education costs are not included for our students who attend BOCES placements because we receive those funds through excess cost aid. So next year, our BOCES aid is expected to increase, and that's due in part to an increase in our aid ratio and also our increased participation. So we have our technology installment purchase agreements and also increases in our career and technical education enrollment. Lastly, instructional materials aid makes up a very tiny portion of state aid, about 1%. We get a per pupil reimbursement for each of these categories: hardware and technology, software, library materials, and textbooks, and pupil counts are anticipated to remain the same. So therefore, our instructional materials aid will remain the same as the prior year. So with that, or each year, we issue caution that the New York State projections are always wrong. So this is just a look back at the last 5 years to show what New York State projects in their aid runs, and that's shown by the light blue bar, and in the dark blue bar what we actually receive. So typically we receive on average about $600,000 less than what the state says that we're going to get. 18-19 was so far off, we were about $1.5 million less than what the state was projecting. So it requires a lot of reconciliation that we in the business office perform as soon as the governor's proposal comes out, to try to sift through the projections and figure out what's reality, because it comes out in dribs and drabs. The day the governor's proposal is released, we get this nice one-page piece of paper that has some numbers on it with absolutely no backup. And then over the next few weeks, they begin to release supporting documentation, how they came up with their numbers. And then we, of course, at the local level, need to go inside and reconcile to make sure that it's accurate. So typically we receive less than what the state is projecting, and just want to include that caveat moving forward. So next year we are anticipating an increase in our state aid of about $300,000, which is great considering just 2 months ago our concern was that we were going to have about a $4 million shortfall. Keep in mind that 2.9 million of this state aid is actually federal aid that is supplanting another 2.9 million that the state shortchanged us, or intends to shortchange us. So again, good news, our state aid is going up about 300,000 or 1.5%. At our last budget meeting, we reviewed the other 3 categories here, local sources, which again are going down as a result of a decrease in our debt service expense, and a related decrease in interfund transfer from the debt service fund. Appropriated fund balance and reserves remain the same at $3 million. However, we are relying less on our reserves next year. And our goal for this year is to build up our fund balance and our reserve funds in anticipation of what looks to be a challenging 22-23 school year. So our next budget presentation will be presenting our tax levy or our tax cap, and then we'll have the full picture of our revenue budget that really allows us to move further with our expenditure budget and what we can afford to put out for next year. So unknown future variables, again, we'll be presenting our tax cap at the next meeting. Transportation aid and also excess cost aid reductions. I failed to mention that earlier. So we are still unsure of whether or not we will be funded for transportation aid and excess cost aid for periods of extended closure. In current education law, it requires in-person instruction in order for aid to be generated. So we're hopeful there will be some resolution that provides the district with our full transportation aid and excess cost aid reimbursement for this current year. And all of these other variables, of course, we continue to investigate throughout budget development. So this concludes our third budget presentation. We've got 2 more, and then we've got our community budget forum. I spoke to Mr. Treloar this afternoon to figure out how best to accommodate the budget forum. In all likelihood, the circumstances aren't going to be much different on March 16th than they are today on February 9th. So in all likelihood, we'll have to have a budget forum through Zoom. And we'll do our best to make sure that it's as interactive as possible, and that folks have the ability to ask any questions that they have, or whatever they need to share with us. Before the board then has two more presentations on the 23rd and the 6th, another budget forum to get everyone's last input before a week later the board will adopt the budget on April 20th. May 11th is the required budget hearing, and then on Tuesday, May 18th is the budget vote and trustee election. So please visit our website. All of our presentations are up on our website. Also, School Budget 101, which I referenced a little bit earlier, has a lot of information specific to state aid, which can be very complicated. So if you ever have any questions, there's a wealth of information on our website.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot, some good news in there. Does anyone on the board have any questions for Victor?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
So for 21-22 school year, we're essentially, right, so you had stated that we're gaining 2.9 million in federal aid, but he's taking away 2.9 million in state aid. Is there a concern, right? Because I'm going to guess that the federal aid is only a 1-year thing. So is there a concern that we're not going to have the $2.9 million reinstated for 22-23?
Yes, so that is a concern. And with that, now I'll be the optimist. So with that, there's the hope that the New York State economy will improve over the course of the next year and a half. So that $2.9 million is a direct result of the financial circumstance that we're in New York State, due to the pandemic. So while it may not be 2.9, it may be some amount, less than that theoretically. It could be zero. I mean, of course, time will tell. Just 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, when we were reviewing our long-range financial plan, there was no CARES Act relief legislation. So at that point, we anticipated it was going to be absolute Armageddon. The federal government came through, and now we have, now we're held harmless. I understand that there's already discussions of another COVID relief package, and once that's approved, those funds would then be available for a subsequent year. So, it's concerning, but there's enough time between now and the year, and next year, that we can sit back and wait and see how it develops. But again, focusing on this year ahead of us, we're all just thankful that we're going to get through 1 year, and then just hope for the best.
If I could pony off of that one, I know the current school year they were giving us our aid in increments, possible talk about a withdrawal. Has that been resolved yet, or?
That has been resolved, and they are now telling school districts that they will pay 100% of the state aid allocation for this current 2021 school year no later than March 31st. So the state had, I should say, the withholdings. So the state began withholding current year aid back in August when they begin providing school district with their funding. So they withheld 20% of our first few aid payments in August and September. So they've now indicated that they're going to restore that withholding no later than March 31st.
Okay. And I know the NYSBA's been meeting with all the assembly, but just recently, Westchester Putnam School Board, last Thursday, they had a meeting with our local assembly members, and they were pushing the fact, like Mr. Carlson said, it's a bad budget. They're taking the money, putting it in the other hand, and they all seem to be on with whatever you're talking to, fight the governor on the reduction of aid, classifications and combinations and stuff. This Thursday, there's another meeting with our senators, who I'm hoping are going to push the same thing. And on Friday, Dr. Banlow and myself are getting in on a meeting with our Senator Harckham. So I would ask if there's any questions that the board would like to bring up. Maybe we can go over it at the end and just to think if there's something you want to bring up. I mean, just from listening tonight, I know they would want to talk about the consolidation of aid. I know Sonia had mentioned the open meeting law. I don't know if we'd be out of place maybe bringing that up, but that's something we could throw out there. And maybe, I remember last year they did a waiver on the 180 school days, just in case there was any issue with timing to make sure we get our full funding. So that might be something we want to bring up as well. But if anybody could just think about that, and like at the end, I'll bring up some legislative stuff. And if anybody has some insight of what the board or the administration would like to bring, I'd be more than happy to carry it forward.
If I could, just one quick question. Victor, as far as if the transportation aid starts to look different, how would that potentially impact the fleet replacement plan that we've had in place, and that sort of was going to be a nice way to keep our fleet up to date without killing our budget every year?
In terms of proposition number 2, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, So if transport, so usually when we get the, sort of what we're going to spend on the fleet replacement plan, part of that is the transportation aid is going to replace it. So.
Right. So if the consolidation does happen, again, it removes that incentive, that 50% reimbursement that we get for transportation aid. So you're right, Eric, that's a good point. Moving forward, any of our future bus purchases really would be, limited, or if a district, for example, were to purchase a significant number of vehicles in a certain year, they wouldn't get that incentive, that transportation aid that they get, as current education law stipulates. So you're right. A consolidation of those services would also impact our fleet replacement plan.
Great, thank you.
Scott, you could put that on your list. If anyone has any other ideas for Scott as well, let him, just shoot an email to the group. Okay, anyone else questions?
I couldn't hear you, Sonia. Was that just me?
No, I can't hear her.
How about now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unstable at the moment. I'm not sure what's happening. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
If it goes out, Carrie, jump in there. So next up are just public remarks. This is the time that we share any emails or communication that we received prior to the start of our meeting that have to do with the action items on today's agenda. And I don't believe we received any correspondence about any action items prior to starting the meeting today. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in that case, we can move on to action item number 1, acceptance of donation, Global Partners Education Alliance grant.
Sorry, had to unmute. Yeah, so so we received a $500 donation to be used for the robotics club. This grant each year is awarded for STEM program enhancements.
Okay, great, thank you. May I have a motion for this item, please? I didn't hear that. Did anyone hear that?
Sorry, I was starting off. It's Carrie. I was going to make the motion.
Okay, thank you. And a second? Yep.
Eric, I'll second.
Thank you, Eric. Questions or comments from the board?
I would just like to thank, I think it's Drewville Mobile is the one that put us up for this donation. So it's Drewville Mobile on Carmel Avenue.
Any other comments? No, okay. Hearing none, we can move on to the vote. Carrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy? I see you saying yes, but I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her? Is it just me? Do you want to try calling in again? Did we lose you altogether? Hold on, I lost her. There she is.
Back on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Myself, Sonia, yes. With none opposed, the motion passes 6-0. Okay, hold on. Action item number 2, approval of tax refund.
Yes, this is a refund of taxes for the current year revenue affecting the current year tax revenue. It's been approved by our attorneys and reviewed by the treasurer and recommended for payment.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion for this item, please.
This is Scott. I'll make the motion.
Thank you. And a second.
This is Francine. I second.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing and hearing none, we can go to the vote. Carrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy?
Yes.
Myself, Sonia, yes. With none opposed, the motion passes 6-0. Okay, action item number 3, approval of 2020-2021 instructional services and related services contract, Westchester School for Special Children.
Yes, this is a contract for one of our special needs students. It's been reviewed by our attorneys and recommended for approval by our director of PPS.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion for this item, please.
This is Daisy. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Daisy. And a second?
It's Carrie, I'll second.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
I just had one question. It listed as one of the, I guess, federal IDEA funds. So this is like a pass-through. It's an allocation that's going to them for doing the activity?
That's exactly what it is. So these pass-throughs, the rates are established by the rate setting unit of the state government and ultimately the federal government. And it's really, like you said, we are a pass-through from, for this agency.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, hearing and seeing none, we can go to the vote. Carrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Eric, how do you vote?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy?
Yes.
Myself, Sonia, yes. With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. Action item number 4, approval of policies, second read 1620 board reorganizational meeting, 1630 voting procedures, first read 6175 recruitment, selection and retention, 7420 sports, and the athletic program.
We submit these 4 policies for your approval, 2 for first read and 2 for second read. They have been recommended to you by the policy committee and have been vetted by our attorneys.
Okay, great, thank you. I need a motion for this item, please.
Says Eric, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, and a second.
This is Scott. I'll make the second.
Thank you, Scott. Questions or comments on any of the policies? Hearing and seeing none, we can go to the vote. And actually, I'm just going to add for our community members that are watching, when we have second and first reads, it's the number of times it comes to the board for review, and policies continue to be reviewed and updated as needed. And so that's just why we go through this process. Okay, sorry. So going to the vote, Carrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy?
Yes.
Myself, Sonia, yes. With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. Okay, action item number 5, calendar adjustment. March Professional Learning Day from March 4th to March 1st.
Let's see if I can do a better job explaining this calendar adjustment.
Eric, listen.
So we currently, last year, the calendar that we brought forward to you identified 2 professional learning days, one being March 4th. We're asking that that day be switched from March 4th, which is a Thursday, to March 1st, which is a Monday. That way we can conduct COVID testing and at the same time have run our professional learning sessions, not related to COVID testing, but run the professional learning sessions for staff throughout the day.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion for this item, please.
This is Francine. I make the motion.
Thank you. And a second.
This is Daisy. I'll second.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
One thing, so you mentioned that this will now be a COVID testing day. So now the kids won't be missing any classes because normally they would be off.
Yes, we see it as a way of gaining back some instructional time, sacred instructional time.
Thank
you. Anyone else? All right, seeing and hearing none, we can go to the vote. Carrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine,
Yes.
Daisy,
Yes.
myself, Sonia, yes, with none opposed, motion passes 6-0. We move on to the consent agenda.
Yes, thank you. Briefly, you heard Dr. Banlow mention earlier in the meeting that we were looking and are appointing this evening a Ms. Perdico for our spring musical. So just as we've made some steps towards some normalcy with our winter sports and our special meeting yesterday morning, we are also affording that opportunity to our students in the performing arts in the spring.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion for this item, please.
It's Carrie, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. And a second?
This is Eric, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none. We can go to the vote. Carrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy?
Yes.
Myself, Sonia, yes. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, we move on to remarks. So here we can share any additional emails, remarks 1 and 2, right? So any emails that came in, any additional emails in general. Carrie, I think there might have been 1 or 2 that came in.
I know that there was one that asked whether the district is or would consider renaming the district from Brewster Central School District to something else. Nothing was suggested, but that was the question posed.
Just so in response to that, when I did reach out to legal counsel, and really the only thing that, you know, some districts might choose to rename schools. And if they do that, then there would need to be a policy that we would have in place, and the rules around all that, and whatever that process is. And they actually did forward to me a policy on another particular district, and how they were very specific in outlining how a district would go about doing that. But again, it had to do with facilities, and it really would, based on that process, it's a board vote that would be able to change a building. But it would again have to follow a very strict guideline that they put in place to do so. And as far as the district, that, you know, I would need to still get some more information on, because a building is something we have more control over. A district is, you know, identified within a state based on the town and the zip code and how the zip code is identified. And that's would be much more complicated if, you know, renaming towns. I believe there was a town that actually did rename itself many, many years ago. But yeah, complicated. I don't know if anyone else has any information they want to share. No. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, any other emails that came in about that? About anything in general?
No, not that I saw. So I don't believe I missed anything.
Yeah, I think most had to do with
yeah,
school and all the issues around being in school. Okay.
Sonia, if I can just jump in.
Yeah.
Because I do recall we had an email about the kindergarten registration.
Okay.
Yes. Can I jump in there?
Yep.
And I was glad that we got that. I will certainly make sure that we get that word out. Thank you, Daisy.
And it was what, just when and how?
When are we going to hear about kindergarten registration? So we'll follow up on that.
Okay, we'll get that out. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Daisy.
Did we miss anything else, anyone? I know there were a lot, so we apologize if we missed someone, and we can address it again. Okay, we can move on to what's next. Sorry, I lost my sheet here. Board remarks, committee updates. Anyone want to share anything else? I know we did a lot of talking tonight. Anything else that we forgot to cover?
I could just say from the legislative side, well, we mentioned the meetings. there's a lot going on in the village. You know, their revitalization program is going forward. I think they're looking on doing some condemnation or something, grabbing properties, eminent domain that's going on in the village. I gave them the updates of what's going on with the schools. Nobody had any particular questions. On a side note, I wanted to flash back to our previous meeting, I think where Mr. Fryer and Grounds and Maintenance had mentioned that they had done a lot of work on the grounds with some free time that they've had, and specifically the old, I guess, cross-country lanes that they had cleared in the woods. I know years ago they used to run, but now they're making it so that they can access it again. I just wanted to ask one question for down the road. I remember my son and some other people had been running on it, and they would occasionally bump into a hunter, because that is hunting grounds near that area. And I was just curious if the school either did or could post no trespassing or no hunting signs, just so people know if they're wandering through the woods and they get to this line, that's where they turn around and go the other way. Just so our kids don't have any awkward experiences with the men in the orange vests, you know, because they'll have orange vests on themselves. So I could just, and I'll leave it to Eric. Yes.
So we actually did have a land surveyor go out and mark, and more for the intent of not wanting to upset our neighbors back there. So we made sure that we marked out, I believe it was 50 yards towards our property, the school's property, because we didn't want to come anywhere near infringing on our neighbors. So we did have a surveyor go out and mark out the property line. Again, 50, I want to say 50 feet in from the boundary line. And, you know, we do understand that there, you know, at times were hunters back there, and I'm not sure whether or not it's actually permitted that there is hunting there.
Thank you. And I'll leave it mostly up to Eric, but there's a BEF technology challenge going on in the district. A gentleman who made a gracious donation earlier has now made some type of a challenge. I suggest everybody participate, and I will leave that up to Eric. I don't want to, you know, get in any trouble here talking out of bounds. Thank you.
So yeah, just to pick up where Scott left off there, the BEF, we have a generous donation opportunity where funds that were raised will be matched by a member of the community. So we're looking to raise $5,000 to fully realize the matching promise that was made. So between now and the end of March, please do what you can. We weren't able to do the Brewster's Got Talent this year, which usually happens around this time of year. So we'd love to have the community support, and all that money is going to go right towards technology in the hands of the students for this year, which obviously with COVID and everything that's going on, technology is a critical need for the department, for the district, and for the students. So we would really appreciate any support that everybody could give. BEF.org. Thanks, Scott.
Is there a deadline on that, Eric?
Yeah, it goes, the funds have to be donated by March 31st to be eligible to be matched.
Anyone else? Thank you, Eric. No? Okay, so our next meeting is February 23rd. And as always, anyone can email the board at boe@brewsterschools.org. And anything that's emailed to us prior to the start of our next meeting will be reviewed during the meeting. And I don't believe we have any other executive items for the evening. So I just need a motion to adjourn the meeting at this time.
I motion we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. In a second.
It's Francine, I second.
Thank you. And Carrie, how do you vote on that?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
Daisy?
Yes.
Myself, Sonia, yes. None are opposed. So motion passes 6-0, and we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.
Enjoy your winter recess.
Have a good night.
Yes, have a great break. We didn't
Thanks.
even say that.